Hey there everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tabletop RPGs are a great way to have some fun with friends and escape the hell world that is current day reality. Whether it be working together as a team to take down a great evil that threatens the realm, or just having a goofy time in the tavern. Though sometimes, as with anything in life, there are always people out there that will just try to ruin the fun for everyone. Much like the examples in these next Dungeons & Dragons horror stories. But first, you know him and love him. It's Lucky, the like and comment kitty. He is getting so big, and has recently discovered how to get on top of the fridge, which has been fun. But anyway, it's time to get into these stories. A usually good player completely stomps on emotionally full RP interaction. By Reddit user Rain on Cooper. So, this story isn't exactly the lengthiest or the worst one that might ever happened, but it definitely set a wedge in the moment. To set the setting up, I and a group of people have been playing DnD for a good few months now. We were around 5 people, not including the DM, but not everyone had a part in this interaction. Honestly, everyone in my group is amazing. Shout out to any of you that recognize this story. The people that mattered were Talia, a bard tiefling woman, and out of character, a great guy. DM, the DM who gives a lot of roleplay freedom that we all enjoy. Jack, the that guy orc paladin, usually a pretty modest guy, if a little bit more combat oriented than us others. Ruben, me, the human ranger. To preface the story, I need to explain a little about my dear Ruben. Bear with me please, cause we're getting a bit edgy. He grew up in a small village and always idolized warlocks, so he wanted to become one. But he failed with every single attempt. No matter what he did, he couldn't get a patron. The more he tried, the more irritated he got, leading to some permanent scarring. The more irritated he got, the more extreme measures he attempted. It all came to a head when he literally was going to attempt a human sacrifice using one of the village children. Another child snitched on him after witnessing the kidnapping, and Ruben was stopped. And finally, as punishment for all of his misdeeds, even though he hadn't done but he almost had, he was banned from the village. Not long after this, he was captured and sold by a slave trader. From this, you can probably get the gist of his personality. Unhinged and pretty disturbed. He doesn't really understand social cues, and is blunt to a fault, and doesn't value life as most people might. With that said, we are ready for the story. So, a week ago, Talia approached me out of character, mentioning how he thought it'd be fun to have Ruben and Talia become romantically invested in each other. I am an absolute sucker for emotional stories and character development, so I said yes. We talked about it for a good bit, because in character, we had trouble with making an idea of how to do it well. An idea came to me, but with my love for surprises, I told him, quote, "Next time we have a long rest, I will sit to watch and you should join in. Then just watch what I do and then do the same thing, but make half of it." He was confused to say the least, and I can't blame him. I can be pretty cryptic and hard to understand at times, but I thought that, even if that didn't work, we could just try another time and do it differently. Yesterday came, and lo and behold, we had another encounter with some characters from my backstory. Perfect, I thought. It would definitely make for a more intimate situation. We traveled a bit more, and then decided to have a long rest, with Talia and I sitting to watch. I said that I would find a branch and begin to whittle with it. Update. So, apparently I didn't know this, but based on comments I've interacted with, role-playing during long rest is uncommon. So I thought it'd be smart to mention that all of our members have had, and probably will continue, to role-play during said downtime. Full well knowing that we might well get caught off guard / ambushed due to it. It's happened before. The DM asked, quote, "What are you going to whittle?" He rarely had us roll for such small things, so I answered, a heart. We agreed that it'd just take about 10 minutes for me to finish. During that talk, Jack belted up, quote, "What are you doing? You're just sitting to watch. Why would you need to RP now? We might even get attacked." I will agree that, yes, doing something while set to watch could likely make an ambush easier, but we continued. After I had finished making the heart, I stared at it for a moment, before snapping it in half. Afterwards, he just sat there and stared at it. Talia caught on, and he told the DM he'd like to whittle something too. Half a heart. After doing that, she walked over and took a seat beside me and placed the heart against mine, so it fit as best it could. Everyone was just watching silently, the DM included. RP lovers the whole bunch. The only one that didn't look too excited about it was Jack. He even yawned at some point. We carried on with Ruben turning his head and staring confused at Talia. Talia spoke, quote, "You know, when you lose faith and heart, it's always good to search for someone who can help you grow a new one, or even share one." He is way better with words than I ever could be. Even out of character, I was a little amazed. A tear streamed down Ruben's face. No one had ever shown such care for him before. Talia cupped his cheek, and Ruben bawled his eyes out, sobbing into Talia's hand. This felt like a such great moment, so many emotions, such development. I personally absolutely loved it. Then, Jack spoke again, quote, "Alright, are we done now?" That one sentence felt like nails on a chalkboard. Jack had never acted like this before, so it came completely out of left field. To say the least, I was stunned, and still am. I don't exactly know how to proceed, so please, if anyone has some advice, I'd love to hear it. Update 2. So I took the advice of the comments and went to text Jack as well as asked the main group if people found the RP bothersome due to romance, as we've had longer ones in the downtime before, but it seems he had blocked me. I ring up the DM about this, since that didn't make sense at all, and this is the conversation we had. Me, "Hey, DM, you aren't busy, right?" The DM, Nah, what's up?" Me, "Well, the thing that happened last session has bothered me greatly, and I've gotten some advice from people of what to do. I went to talk with Jack a little bit ago, but he blocked me." The DM was silent for a bit, so I continued. I also was told that maybe Talia and I might have been a bother with the roleplay we did, and wanted to check in with everyone if it was. DM, you don't need to think about Jack. He decided to leave. Me, what? Why? The DM, "Alright, listen to this. Yesterday he called me and actually talked about the thing that happened too. What it basically boiled down to was that he didn't want this just to turn into a, in his words, dating sim, and just you and Talia screwing around and getting in the way, and he was sure everyone else agreed. I told him I would take it to mind, and I called up the others, and texted if they didn't answer. 2 of them said they're neutral about it and weren't really bothered, and the last one actually thought it was charming. So I called up Jack again. It didn't even ring more than once before he answered. I told him that the others seemed fine with it, and he just hung up. And you're not the only one who's blocked." Me, "I see. Well, at least it's good you guys weren't bothered. I honestly really don't know how to react." DM, "Neither do I, and I think it's best that we take at least a week's break. I had planned something with his backstory, so I need some time to fix that. I'll message in the group chat about the cancellation and when the next time is." Me, "Alright, thanks, see ya." DM, "Bye." So, that did not go in any way how I expected it. I'm glad I asked you guys for help. Thank you for both support, criticism, and your assistance. Wow, that story sure took a turn. Firstly, I don't understand why people in the comments of OP's original post said that RP is not normal during long rests. Sure it is. My group does it all the time, as it's one of the best times to have development between characters. And there is no reason why they wouldn't be able to have moments while taking watch. Second, it sounds like this style of game was heavy in RP, which is fine, and that this type of game is just not the kind for Jack. Though, to completely block everyone involved in the game after what I would consider good roleplay is just overkill. Maybe he had some other stuff going on and he just took it out on the DM and the other players. Though, let's move on to the next story. Player retires helpless PC for a new one, only for DM to kill the new one after player left early. Submitted to the DnD Doge subreddit by Reddit user WooLooMVP10. This was a few years back, and I remember how out of all the campaigns I've been in, this was the least fun to play because of an oversight on my part. This was the third 5th edition campaign I've played, and because I got too attached to my previous player character, who died at the final boss of the previous campaign, I had them be reincarnated as a basic human fighter, so it would be fair that they didn't retain their abilities going in. Had I known what the campaign was about, I would have never made a human fighter. The cast isn't that important, save for my dad, who bowed out early for reasons I'll get to, and another player trying to be the next Dritz by being a drow. Anyway, the campaign, Out of the Abyss. I went into it completely blind, so I was caught off guard that we started captive with our weapons and armor confiscated, as well as being in dim light. And, if I can remember correctly, an anti-magic field that prevented my dad's spellcaster from doing anything. I don't remember if it was anti-magic, but I recall my dad struggling to do anything as well. Any attempt I made in trying to escape was met with my character getting kicked and eventually knocked out. After session 1, my dad told me that he was looking forward to playing with me since he used to play D&D back in the day, but it wasn't any fun being stuck in the Underdark, unable to do anything, so until the group manages to escape, he wasn't going to attend anymore. I almost thought the same thing, but pressed on through private RP with the DM on Facebook Message to catch up with the rest of the group after they escaped the guards, but still in the Underdark. I missed a few sessions for real-life reasons, which is why I had the private RP in the first place. In the first actual combat that I had with them, it became clear that my character was a liability due to being a human fighter with no armor and only a club they picked up, as well as a constant disadvantage due to dim light and constantly getting knocked out. I realized that this character wasn't going to work in this session, and I didn't want to waste anyone's time with a fighter that couldn't fight. So I decided with the DM's consent to roll up a new character. A half-elf paladin named Hawk who had dark vision, as well as being able to heal and tank for the party, so I can feel useful to them. The first session with Hawk went so much better than with the fighter, and then I left early as I always do. Later that night, I found in the Facebook group to see a player recapping the session, and that Hawk was killed in battle after I had left the group for the week. This was the final straw for me, as it was one thing if my actions killed my character, but for the DM to kill the PC after the player left was just bull. I called them out on it, but the DM just said that the 2 enemies Hawk was fighting before I left were able to do enough damage to kill him. Couldn't he had just retreated after everyone else escaped? I asked. He responded that Hawk stood where he was because that's where I left him after I went home, and wasn't going to have him suddenly disappear until next week. Imagine if I didn't find the recap all week. I would have awakened with a character sheet only to be told that they died and I needed another one when it's the only one I brought. If Out of the Abyss was a good campaign to anyone else, I'm sorry, but this ended up being the most unfun campaign I ever had, as my first PC was useless, and my attempt to contribute to the party with a new PC got stabbed in the back when I turned to leave. Now, it's kind of messed up for a DM to just flat out kill someone's character when they aren't there. Though I will also say that OP did kind of put the DM in a tight spot, as it sounds like OP left in the middle of a combat encounter. At that point, the only real option is to ask OP to stay and at least finish the combat, stop the game there, or have the DM take control of your character and let the dice roll where they may. I think the best option here would have been for the DM to actually stop the game and pick it up next time. Though I am curious to what you all would do in this situation. Be sure to let me know in the comments. On to our next story. Dungeon Master struggles with problem players, by Reddit user AdIntelligent4694. Hey y'all, first time posting, and for something that just happened in my game today. The main characters are myself, Brock, the Rogue Ranger, Kevin, the Paladin, Daniel the druid, Shane the fighter, Greg the barbarian, Niles the monk, problem number 1, Freddy the rogue, problem number 2, and the dungeon master, everyone being good aligned. I will be using fake names for kingdoms and characters. This was the first time playing Dungeons & Dragons for everyone but the dungeon master. The kingdom of Estania is at war with the kingdom of Westalis, and we were hired to relieve a town that had been under siege and guide the townsfolk from the frontier to the interior of the kingdom. Through the journey, we had encountered a lot of smaller hamlets and helped the people there. Pretty standard stuff. To start, Greg was a bit of a problem, as he would rush ahead of the party after each combat to maintain his rage, which the dungeon master explained multiple times would end after each combat. This got us into some really bad situations where they would trigger an encounter before we had a chance to plan or heal up. Tied into this was the fact that if the party wanted to sneak past something, he'd go on ahead and announce himself, so that we would have to fight with the explanation that his and the paladin's stealth rolls would suck, so there was no point. The dungeon master had a talk with him about this, then the bad behavior stopped, and we've had jolly cooperation since. Now for the other two. While on the road, we were ambushed by a band of bandits. All but one was killed, and that remaining one got tortured by Freddy for information. The DM let him do it, but noted that it would carry consequences later by affecting our reputation, before being forced to cut him off after he wanted to describe how he was torturing the bandit, with justification that they're evil, so doing this isn't evil. One bandit camp raid later, we were back on the road. On the way, we found signs that the Westalis vanguard had occupied the nearby village. We managed to get lodging from a patriotic farmer and his family. While we were asleep, Niles, who had taken sleight of hand and stealth proficiencies, looted through the family's home and stole their savings, then snuck back into the barn with the rest of us. The DM again said that there would be consequences, but for now, the party and family didn't know, so we left with no problem the next day. A bit later, a few hard-fought battles and the village recaptured, we rounded up the soldiers we knocked out and those who surrendered. The party had decided to hand them over to the villagers and send word to Estonia to pick them up as prisoners of war, while Niles and Freddy wanted to kill them. Once we had gathered the villagers and prisoners, Freddy described as he lops off a prisoner's head, while Niles breaks another's neck. The DM, again, allows it, but notes that the villagers have gone from praise to horror at the display. Before leaving the village, Niles visits the local shop and demands some free goods for liberating the village and to support the war effort. The shop owner, due to fear, gives some supplies, though it isn't enough for Niles, and he threatens the owner and their child. They hand over what gold they have, and he leaves. We reach level 4 and end up fighting a young dragon at a Westalis camp. It goes surprisingly well, but the problem was that Freddy ran off to loot the commander's tent while we fought. He found a magical greatsword and a mountain of gold, both of which he refused to tell the party about. The DM noted his strength had a negative modifier and no proficiency with greatswords. That didn't matter to Freddy. Niles wasn't going to be outdone here though. The dragon downed him, and when Kevin burned his 20 points of lay on hands to bring him back, he spent one turn drinking his potion of healing, before using his second turn to try and steal Kevin's potion, despite being saved by him. DM shot this down immediately. The last bit of behavior before today's session was regarding class features. Shane frequently made use of Action Surge to get off additional damage at the start of combat after every short or long rest. Freddy didn't like that, explaining that rogues were supposed to be the high damage, single target characters with their sneak attack, and asked that the feature be removed from Shane's class, or be added to his too since it doesn't make sense to be a fighter feature. The DM also shot this down. Now on to today's session. We reach another village, this one being sacked by the Westalis vanguard. After the fight, 5 out of 7 expressed concern for the villagers, so we begin moving between the homes to find anyone who might have survived. Niles and Freddy wanted to loot the soldiers and villagers first, and the party splits. When I eventually found a chest filled with gold that I pocketed, Niles moved his token to the room I was in, insisting that he would have been in the room with me. This comes up later, as in Roll20, he rolled 2 d20s, a 3 and a 10, and a few moments later, I lost access to my character sheet and had to refresh the page. Turns out, it is because Niles messaged the Dungeon Master to steal my coin pouch, and before getting approval, rolled and added our bonuses. 3 plus 9, Perception versus 10 plus 7, Sleight of Hand. He had beaten my score and removed all of my gold and added it to his character sheet. The DM restricted access and had to figure out how much gold both of us should have had. Moving forward, we split the party again, with what matters here being that Freddy, Shane, and Kevin were paired up. When Freddy's passive perception spotted a trap ahead of them, the DM began describing it, before he interrupted saying he doesn't tell anyone he saw it, and tells everyone to keep moving in the same direction. Again, this was shot down. The nail in the coffin was when Daniel went down in combat, Freddy went over to his body and asked to give him a potion. DM said it was something you could do, and once he got approval, said that he gave Daniel poison. What ensued was an argument between Niles, Freddy, and the DM, where they claimed we were being railroaded and they couldn't do anything, and that the Dungeon Master already said he had already approved of giving the potion. 15 minutes later, both were kicked from Roll20 and the Discord server. Thanks to everyone who reads, and I'll try to trim this down since there's a lot of fat. There's just a lot in my head right now. TLDR, players push the limit of what is considered good, eventually start to resort to PvP that was banned during Session 0, and both get kicked from the game. This seems to be a problem for some reason with certain new players in tabletop RPGs. They get told that they can basically do whatever their imagination can come up with, within the rules of the game. And some people will just have a switch flip in their head to basically go murder hobo off the bat. It was mentioned that in Session 0, the DM strictly said no PvP, which Freddy promptly ignored when he tried to give Daniel poison instead of a potion, which is really cringe and stupid, "Hey, look what I'm doing" behavior. And then in Roll20, for Niles to access OP's character sheet to steal his gold before the DM could make a ruling should have gotten him a warning right off the bat. Though, how Niles had access to OP's character sheet in Roll20, I have no idea. I have only used it to play in games, and as far as I know, I don't have access to my fellow players' sheets. All in all, these players sounded like a nightmare to play with, and hopefully OP's game is now better for not having them in it. Now, while these stories are bad experiences in tabletop RPGs, I do often get comments where the commenter says that they are apprehensive about trying them due to these stories. I feel like I have to say that these stories are outliers. Most people are decent, and there are many more games that are great with great people in them. So if you're on the fence about trying tabletop RPGs, I say give it a go. Just use these stories as a guide on what to look out for. Though, if you do have a horror story that you would like to be read on the channel, feel free to comment it below, post it in the channel subreddit, or even just at me on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you, and if you're new to tabletop RPGs, I hope your future games are great. Until next time.